Hey, welcome to episode number 23 of That Marketing Show, brought to you by The Coffee Group. Real excited today to talk to you and to talk to Justin. And Justin Lucasavige is a wonderful individual who is a coach to the coaches. This guy is brilliant. You got to listen to a lot of the nuggets that are in here. This is like a 45-minute free session for coaching, for business coaching. Justin has his own coachradio.tv. He's had, over 275 episodes. He's been a professional broadcaster in his past. He has his own coaching business, obviously, to coach to individuals, businesses, and other coaches. He's a wonderful person who's followed by quite a bit of people on Twitter, and he's got a pretty high up position in Free Agent Academy as a director over there, which is an academy for people who would like to learn more about becoming a self-employed individual. And they've got some really good stories and some wonderful, wonderful direction on how to get yourself involved into getting into the business of being an entrepreneur. With that being said, let's get on to the episode. Enjoy. So I have got Justin on today, who is Justin Lucasavige, who I found one of the most interesting coach related topics. I think I found him from a perspective of like, okay, who's the coach's coach, right? And I think that that's really where, you came into play, which is like, okay, let's get a coach, but wait a minute, why don't we get the coach's coach? Because he's probably the best coach of all the coaches. So Justin, thank you for jumping on the marketing show here. That marketing show is, is something that you and I discussed probably about a year ago, and you were sort of the beginning of this whole process of me kind of fleshing this out, and here it is. And I've already interviewed guys like Gary Vaynerchuk, and I think the reality is that you can do what you need to do, but it's good to have some guidance. But one of the things I wanted to talk about today, I want to go off the path. I'm going to go way off the path because you went way off the path. Let's talk about energy. What did you learn from your time away in April? You spent how many days off the grid or off the working grid?
Yeah, I took off, and I'm trying to think of where we are now. We're in May. Yeah, so I took the whole month off. I've been doing coachradio.tv. I've been doing the podcast there. Well, actually, it started out, it's gone through a number of iterations, but I've been doing a podcast in one form or another for 5 years. And so this is my first kind of break of any length of time, but I took the whole month off. It was big.
I just can't. I took 3 days off. I went to Atlantic City.
Yeah.
And I took 3 days off, and I come back, I'm like, I can't believe that there's life beyond work. So I can't imagine a month. What did you learn? What did you really learn from the time away? What are the takeaways? If I took 30 days off, what would I come back with? Or what do you think I would come back with?
Well, the big thing for me, and the reason that I wanted to get away is simply because when you're in the spotlight, and that can be thousands of people, it can be one person. If you do this, a blog or a show, podcast, audio, video, whatever that is, you've got people that you feel maybe I don't know the right words for it. You kind of feel propelled a little bit to live up to their expectations, right? This is me and who I am. And if you're trying to work, if you've got people that you want them to hire you, you set yourself to this standard. And so there's things that you essentially, I think in my mind, on one form or another, anybody who lives in the public eye, whether that's big or small, feels compelled to live up to somebody's expectations. This is who I think you think I am, and so that's how I have to live. And I didn't want to do that. I needed a month to really sit back and say, I need to make some decisions for me and not care about, well, what am I going to tell my listeners about this thing, which is really a horrible way to live. If that's all you're doing is making decisions because, well, how is that going to affect these people that watch my show or listen to me or take me somewhere, in their iPod? I didn't want to make decisions. And so the biggest thing for me was being able to step back, and within a week or so, I really got out of that mindset. And there's some things that I was working through with with some new opportunities and some companies that I'm working with, and just some new transitions that I've made, that I could filter that through a lens of just how does this affect me and my family, and not what does it mean for me to have to tell somebody else about this. And it was really, really good.
Yeah, I can't imagine the amount of just free thinking. Like,
Yeah.
it's almost like the gymnastics that you were able to probably, mental gymnastics,
Yeah, I don't do the
not
others.
physical. But those are the things, and it comes in bits and bites. Especially if you have family, you have bits and bites of time that you kind of have that you have to. But to be able to spend enough time to sort of correlate a lot of the things that you do, step out of yourself,
Yeah.
and it's critical. And you coach a lot of people. I mean, it's not like it's just not the show. I mean, you've got a lot of people who rely on you to give you, kind of be on the couch, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
And so, it's almost like you think about where you could, potentially make that more of a strategy, right? Where you have to take the time,
Yep.
you know.
Yep.
And I always thought about that as, part of like where do things go.
Yeah.
The next thing I wanted to talk about, and this is something that I think we kind of left off on, or I actually had a discussion with some other folks about this, is the entrepreneurial plateau. And I think that this happens to a lot of us who are entrepreneurial people, is that, what, it took me a while, but now the landing gear is up, plane's taken off, we've got a vibrant business, there's no question this is viable. Now what?
Yeah.
Right. And I think there's a big, and again, I had this discussion yesterday with a friend of mine. I said, we've kind of like built this thing, and it's like, okay, great, it works. And I think they're big for a lot of entrepreneurs. Once they get enough resources, money, or whatever time, now that they've kind of invested this time or their life into this business, what do they do next? And I had this discussion with Peter Shallard, and it was interesting because he kind of brought it up. I'm not sure if you know who he is, but it's sort of another sort of circle around the coach folks. I mean, there's so many different levels and where they are, but what do you think about what? Let's talk about the entrepreneurial and entrepreneurial plateau, and how do you get beyond that?
Well, I don't know what that looks like for each person, but I think it's pretty simple. I think you identify what it is that you want to do, kind of the what and the why. The how, I have no clue, but I know what the next step is, and I have to take that. And so in my life, it's, man, here's where I want to go, here's what I want to do, and this is why. And so I've defined all of those things. I have no clue how I'm going to get there, and I never take the time to plan it all out. But I know what that next step is, and I take that next step. And I guarantee you won't find the second step until you take the first one. So if you're stuck like that, you take that first step.
I think that's great advice. I think part of the problem with a lot of the entrepreneurs is they get stuck in such a day-to-day routine.
Yeah.
Like, I know I've gotten into it where, again, like, how you took 30 days, I took 3 days, and I come back and I'm like, I can't keep doing this.
Yeah.
I'm not working every Saturday and every Sunday. We got to figure out a better strategy.
Yeah.
And so that's my next goal, is to how do I compartmentalize, time and all those things. But let's talk about coaching. How did you get here, and why? I mean, we talked about why, and like where you want to go next. But how did you get to the place where you are now? It's very interesting how this business of being a coach was it was a big thing, a couple of years ago. But now it's kind of gotten into such niche tasks that need to get done, and you're sort of like the Uber coach. I don't know which.
You're giving me a lot to live up to here.
Yeah, well, you know what I mean, is that there's a lot of people who you work with that are coaches, right? That come to you for advice. So how did you get to this spot?
Well, I never dreamt that I'd even be in this spot, but it goes back to the last thing we talked about. I knew where I wanted to go, or at least I knew what that next step was that supported where I wanted to go. And I took that next step. And after you take so many steps, you start looking back and saying, here's the experience that I've gained throughout this. What do I do with it? And sometimes I want to go here, but with this experience that I gain, I can look back and say, I don't necessarily want to go here. I want to go over here. And So it doesn't mean that all those steps you take were for nothing. Those steps gained you the experience to help you clarify that place that you wanted to go to. And you change. And so it's like getting in a sailboat and saying, all right, well, I want to go from Maryland to Spain, right? And you start going to Spain and you say, man, with all these waypoints that I've gone through, I don't know exactly how to get to Spain. I don't point my boat directly at Spain. We've got to take into account the wind and all the other weather and the currents and all that other sailing stuff. And you start going and you go through these waypoints and you have these experiences and you say, I don't really want to go to Spain. I want to go to Morocco, which is really close to Spain, right? It's just a little further south there in Africa. And so you adjust your track and you start going that way. Well, you started and you've perhaps have gotten halfway there where you would have still been sitting in Maryland had you been waiting to clarify all of this before getting started. So I'm just really a big fan of identifying what that next step is and taking that one step and then taking another step and another step. Because what most people are doing is they're sitting there waiting to have it all figured out. And I guarantee you'll never have it all figured out. So you'll still be sitting there.
No, I think you're right. I mean, well, action is always going to trump ideas. No question about it. Although I think actionable ideas are probably the better of the two. But we could probably argue from different philosophical points of view, which is more successful. So again, I wanted to say, how did you, when you ended up here, when I said that, you've kind of taken your ship from different ports or different waypoints, was there a point when you said, okay, I think this is viable? And that's sort of what I was trying to get at as an entrepreneur. Yeah. You're like, there was a certain point where you go, yeah, I think, this is good. Let me live at 8,500 feet up in the mountain and this is where I want to be.
Yeah. When I started, and so I was working another job and putting in a lot of time in both of them, so I had 2 full-time jobs. There was this point where I was consistently making a small amount of income, and I think it was about $1,800 a month. So I was making that very consistently on average, this $1,800, and I realized I could make more, but I don't have any more time to give to it. I can't.
Right.
Something has to go. And so I think there's this very clear point, like when do you step full-time into a business and you can say, well, gosh, if you're making $50,000 over here in your full-time job and your business matches that one for one, 50,000, it's pretty clear. Right. It's clear and simple, right? You just jump. You just replaced it. I didn't have that. I couldn't physically make more than $1,800 a month with the time that I had available. And so it was more of a leap of faith where I had to say, all right, I'm going for it. And I did. I left my job and over the next 2 to 3 months was able to replace that income. It was a lot of work. Yeah. But now I had the time because I wasn't traveling and doing this with my full-time job. And so, at some point it just started to work, and I've been following this path ever since, and gaining a lot of experience. And what I'm doing now isn't what I started out to do, but I've gained experience, and I've listened to people and my clients that say, hey, you're really good at this. I hired you for this because I see that you've done a great job of that. And I've thought, oh, have I? I mean, that's not what I do. That's not this area that I coach in professionally, but a whole bunch of people have started to pay attention, have said, you're good at this. And so right now I'm working with a company very closely, and I'm running their AdWords. And so that's pay-per-click with Google. So when you go to right. Google and search for something, it's those top results that come up. And they have said, hey, we saw what you did in a couple other instances over here. And I said, well, gosh, it's just something that I learned. I'm definitely not an expert. And they said, do you want to be? And and I take this up and I think, you know what, that could be really fun, at least for a period of time. Who knows? Long term, I don't know. But if they're willing to pay me for it, yeah, man, that's something that I'd really love to learn, how to get better at. And so I take that next step. And so I'm investing a lot of time into that one area right now. And yeah, we'll see where that goes. But I follow that path and I listen to what people are telling me I'm good at.
That's so key. Oh my God. Yeah, you hit it. It is, you can't, people don't spend the time to smell the roses along the way.
Yeah.
That's what it is. I mean, if you get the feedback and you don't pay attention to the feedback, then you're just missing out.
Right.
One question, why did you pick podcasting? I do video. I found it to be effective. I'm standing up. I'm at a chalkboard. I'm yelling
Yeah.
at people how to do marketing, and
Yeah, and you do a good job.
Well, thank you. A lot of people have given me kudos on the fact that it comes through, and I'm a extrovert, so it's fine.
Yeah.
So how did you get to podcasting? Because to me, podcasting, I couldn't do it. Like, it's just something I'd be like, I can't even. This is tough enough for me to be in front of a microphone and spend this much time, or I'd rather be on a stage or be in front of a camera, and just barking out, all kinds of cool stuff. So
Yeah.
how did you get to podcasting? Was it just the simplicity, or is it maybe a timing-ish thing?
It was more on a whim.
Okay.
I'd like to say it was part of this strategic business plan that I had laid out. But truth be told, I had a radio station when I lived in North Carolina. I'm in Colorado now. But a radio station approached me and said, "Hey, we'd like you to lead this show." And I looked at it, and they were just really chasing some money on it. And I said, "No, these terms are not good." And I walked away from it. And 6 months later, another station approached me and said, "Hey, we'd like to give you your own show." And I thought, okay, well, I've gone through this and whatever. And then I started to think, well, gosh, I've not done this before. I literally had no experience. I've never been in a radio station, let alone a studio, until the very first time I walked in to do my first show. Another thing that I'm really a big fan of is knowing your strengths and knowing your weaknesses. Podcasting or doing radio, which is all this is it wasn't a strength or a weakness. I'd never done it.
Right.
So how do I know whether or not I'm going to be good at it? And so the opportunity was there, and I thought, man, this scares the crap out of me. I am going to step up and take this as an opportunity, and maybe I'll fall flat on my face. And I was willing to be embarrassed to try it out and to test it. And all those people that were listening that very first show, which we didn't record the very first few, and that was sort of on purpose. And I'm glad I didn't, because they were pretty horrible. But it was all just local friends, family that was listening, and just whoever was hitting seek on their radio as they were driving through Raleigh, North Carolina at the time. I didn't know whether or not I was going to be good at it, but there's an opportunity, and I took it. And that's how I've built my business. As opportunities come up, I say, if this is a weakness, and I know flat out I'm horrible at public speaking, why would I speak in public if I know that? But doing this radio thing was this in-between area. It could go either way. And so I jumped into it, and it was horrible at first, and I thought, I'm going to work at this because it's fun.
I think you're right. I think you hit it's fun, right? So at the end of the day, that's what's the divider between
and you work
making
at it.
some decisions, right?
Yep.
And I think that goes back to a lot of things. Let's talk about hiring a coach. Obviously, because this is sort of the crux of what I would consider the most important thing in our discussion, because I'm at the crossroads. I'm interviewing coaches. I've got one that is giving me a proposal, and there's others that have. I'm still stuck in the middle trying to think, is it right? Is it not right?
Yeah.
To me, there's 5 parts to picking a coach: great listener, coachable coach, visionary, results driven. And I have one more that wasn't probably on your list, but it's on my list, is road mapping. And it's really helping with goals, with multiple visionary theories, and getting people out of ruts. So let's talk about that quickly, about where that fits into, how you might suggest how to find a coach.
I think you need, at the end of the day, you need somebody who you really get along with, who you get along well with. And that person could be your friend even. And the way that I look at it is not just these random people out there who you say you're friends with, or they're this online person that you've never met, but a true friend. My definition of a true friend is somebody who will tell you not what you want to hear, but what they think you need to hear. And true friends will hurt your feelings. And I just went through this with a friend locally here. We sat down and we had a really difficult conversation. We both told each other some things that the other person didn't want to hear, but we're real friends, and real friends tell each other the truth. And that's what you need to look for in a coach. And so you're not going to find a coach in a phone book, although I'm sure there's plenty listed there. I've never looked. We heat our house here in Colorado with a wood-burning stove, and we collect phone books because they're the best way to start a fire. I'll have to look through the C's this next time. for coaches. But you need to find somebody who's worked with a coach and ask them about their experience. And because we have the internet, it's pretty easy to find to find these people and to go into forums and places like that, and just in your social networks, ask around. But get some referrals from people that have worked with a coach. You're not just going to do a Google search and find somebody. That's a case where pay-per-click advertising probably doesn't work. Those guys are just out there. The really good coaches aren't advertising. I used to advertise, used to spend a lot of money on it, but it's been probably 4 years since I've done any amount of advertising and spent money on it, because the really good coaches get referrals every single day. People are coming in wanting to work with them. That's where you need to find a coach, from somebody who's worked with the kind of person that you need.
Great. That's just great strategy. And I want to dovetail that into another discussion, which is finding mentors.
Mm-hmm.
This has been my biggest challenge. I don't know what it is about this, but it's been a sticking point about finding someone who's, and I don't think mentors and coaches might be different avenues, where
yes, definitely.
A coach is more, ground rules, blah, blah, blah. A mentor is the guy you go and you hang out with, and you just get the nuggets that they drop as they kind of go through their daily process. What's the best strategy for finding mentors? And I want to tie this into, and I think this is where this is going to end up, into mastermind groups or groups of mentors, which might be the better strategy, and aligning yourself and finding, maybe it's a time, it's a thing you have to commit to. Maybe we could talk about where that has gone for you, because I think you probably have some stories around this as well.
Yeah, I was a co-founder of a company for a while back in 2012, and we had this mentor that we talked to every week, and he had done a lot of work. He had taken with Groupon. He had taken Groupon International into Europe and Asia. An amazing guy. And at some point we were like, why are you talking to us every week? Like, hey, can we give you a percentage of the company? And he said, if and when you guys go public, I'll just trust that you do the right thing. But he really had an interest in helping us. That's difficult to find in a mentor. And is the reason, quite frankly, that you pay a coach, somebody that can be invested in you. I mean, there's a lot of people that are doing cool things out there that I see, and I just don't have time to help, and I cannot mentor them because I've also got to make money. I could spend all of my time just helping people for free, and that's being a mentor. But it's a horrible business model, and I'm not going to be able to pay my mortgage or put groceries on the table. So you mentioned mastermind groups. I don't like the term mastermind, because a lot of people have taken that to something that I really am not a fan of. And in my mind, there's some really great masterminds out there. I don't care what you call them. But a lot of masterminds, what happens is it's a lot of people just kind of sitting around talking, and you're friends. And you're kind of like friends that, again, care about each other, but not a whole lot. You're not going to tell people the hard things that they need to hear. And what I started a number of years ago is something called a board of directors. And so the difference between a mastermind and a board of directors is, when you think about a real board of directors at a nonprofit or a company, is somebody who truly is vested in a company. Those board of directors is almost always paid. And a nonprofit, sometimes they are paid, but a lot of times they're not. But they really, truly care about each other and what's happening. And so the board of directors groups that I started, and I've run I don't know, probably 4 through this now, are just phenomenal. These guys get together every week. And it's something I started, and I said, I don't want to charge every month. I just want to charge to help people get connected and give them a framework. And now they're all still out there running, and they're doing great. And I don't make anything on it. I just wanted to help them get started. It's a group of people who care about you and your business and your life because they know that you care about them. And that's where a lot of masterminds go wrong, because I tried this. I tried starting probably 7, 8 different groups, and they didn't work, because it was just people that got together and talked, and here's an idea, maybe you should do this. And they didn't get called, people didn't get called out on doing something wrong or something immoral or whatever that was. And a board of directors really will do that. And so whatever you call it, whether it's a board of directors or a mastermind, find those people who care about you, that will tell you the truth. And it's hard to find, it's hard to start. And I'm not starting any right now, and I couldn't tell you the best way to find them other than to find somebody who you connect with, if it's a mentor or a group of people. And these people honestly care about you enough to tell you the truth, especially when it hurts your feelings. That's what you need.
Perfect. I always think about the mentor group it's the questions that you don't know what to ask.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because you haven't even thought about them yet.
Right.
And those are the things that typically these groups make you become aware of, that's the questions that you go, oh,
Yep.
I didn't even know about that. And now I really have to think about, some decisions I'm making, because it affects a much greater level that I would have never had unless I had this other thought process.
Yeah.
And it doesn't need to even be parallel industries. It could be anything, especially going through, like myself going through the growth phase that we're going through right now is how to manage the process. And there's so many people have probably gone through this. I just don't even know what to even ask. And it's interesting to have this dialogue. And that relates to the next question, which is finding true purpose.
Yeah.
This is the biggest thing I think for entrepreneurs is to really dig into finding what is the why, right? So I've had this discussion with so many people, and I don't necessarily know if it's easy for some people to figure it out. Like a Branson knows he wants to be a philanthropic person that tries to change the world or whatever. And maybe you got someone over here who's just dedicated to solving MS or whatever the why is. But it seems like it's always something beyond the business. It's not necessarily tied into like, oh, I need to make, $1 million or whatever. It's more, I need to do something that's completing my purpose. And that why is typically outside. Can we talk about what you find or what you found in the past, how people can find that, or how there's maybe a path there?
Yeah, there's a lot of questions that you can ask. You go to a library or a bookstore, even looking at magazines, and what section do you find that you're going to over and over again? But even that question, it helps kind of kick that discussion off. But when I lived in North Carolina, I tried to read every landscaping book in the library to try to grow grass, and that's not what I want to do for a living. But it's a step in the right direction. There's so many things that you can do, but again, taking that first step and saying, hey, I'm interested in this, going out and doing that, and then stepping back and learning from it. And that's what a lot of people don't do, is they do something and they say, no, that didn't really work. Let's move on to the next thing. And they spend their whole life moving on to the next thing and not ever looking back and figuring out, well, why did I do that? What did I learn from that? Maybe I hated 80% of that thing. But what was that 20% that you really loved? Was it the organization? Was it working with a team? Was it solving a critical issue that people need solved in their life? And it's just having that experience. And I'm still constantly learning this. It's for people in their 20s and 30s and even 40s, it's difficult to figure that out until you have that experience in your 50s and maybe even 60s and 70s to look back on and say, oh, now I can put the pieces together, and now this makes sense, and I see how all of this is coming together. How could I turn this into an organization that really impacts the world, and one that makes money, and one that provides an income or a living, or pulls at my heartstrings? And another question you can ask is, when we talk about heart, is what is it that breaks your heart? And then you have to ask yourself, are you doing anything about it? And that's, I think, in a lot of instances, people know what that is, but they're not doing anything because they don't know what it is, or they don't know how to do it, rather. And again, going back to many questions ago, you don't need to know all the steps. You just need to know the next step. And so if the thing that breaks your heart is all these homeless animals out there, go and volunteer at a humane society, at an animal shelter, and do something about it. And maybe that'll lead to more ideas. And so I think that most of the time, we don't know how to do something. We don't know how to solve that issue. We don't know how to fix something. But we know what that next step is. And I'll hit on that over and over and over again because it's the answer to so many questions. But you figure out that thing that just breaks your heart. And then I can pretty much guarantee most people aren't doing anything about it. And so my encouragement is just to go out and take that next step and do something about it.
So maybe it's a reverse engineering of what's not what you want, and then go backwards and
Yeah.
say, let's take away everything until you're left
Sure.
with maybe a little square that was the answer.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. And I'm a huge fan of reverse engineering and saying, all right, this is the problem. How can we dissect this and solve it? And that's, we look at solving long mathematical equations. I like to go back and say, all right, I don't know where to start. I'm horrible with a blank sheet of paper, but I know what the end result is. And so how do we work backwards and figure out what that next step is? How do we get started?
Good point. So I want to transition this into more maybe a question that could help some of the folks that are on this video and watching, and thanks for all the people that have supported this show. We do a lot of marketing coaching for clients, meaning that we don't necessarily do a one-time thing. We're constantly coaching them. How do you suggest if someone wants to get into the coaching business to get into sort of this process of trying to figure out how maybe it's right for you, maybe it's not right for you, maybe you can do it? Have you got, because obviously you work with new coaches probably, or people who are in the coaching process. How do you know if it's right for you, and how do you set up the program to do it, and pricing and all that stuff? It seems to me I do it very rarely because I just don't know the business and I'm so busy with the day-to-day stuff.
Yeah.
I'd love to have more of that as part of the process because I think I could really bring value to a lot of different environments. And I've thought more of maybe webinars to start or something like that. Maybe you could give your 2 cents on that.
Yeah, I think the very first, in fact, the first thing that I did was get some training on how specifically to help people in the way that I wanted to work with people. So I hired a firm and I went out and I did a week-long thing with like 70 other people. And I came back, and their encouragement is something that I tell people all the time, and that's just to start. Find your first client, and oftentimes it's free. Don't stay there very long. But I found a couple that I could sit down with and give them advice. And I knew they probably weren't going to take it because they weren't paying anything for it. That's a whole nother discussion.
Right.
But I sat down because I wanted to hone this craft of working with people more closely. And so that first step is to just go out and find somebody to work with. You have to know sort of a structure on how you're going to help them. I didn't have to figure out how I was going to charge. All of this other stuff, all these incidentals out there that people get stuck in. It's the how. And again, the first step is just go out and do, and figure out your pricing and all that stuff later. You need to know how you're going to make money, but you don't need to have this detailed plan before you start. And so I did that. And then the very first paid client that I worked with, I think I charged like $125 for a whole lot of work. And then my next one was $250. And then I just started going up from there. And my programs over the past couple of years have very greatly, from saying I'll work with you for 30 minutes to an hour, from there it went up to I used to spend 2.5 hours on the first time with a client. And now it's rare that I spend, somewhere outside of an hour, just because I know that works for me. And I wouldn't have figured that out if I hadn't have tried it. So there's a lot of trial and error and pricing structure and how am I going to work with you? And I've done, I've done contracts all the way up to a year to all the way down as little as just one phone call. And a lot of that has just allowed me to fine tune the structure of all this. So you don't have to figure it out before you start. You just have to start.
Good point. And I have 2 more questions, so we're almost wrapping up here. And I think the 2 questions I want to have are kind of like more into the marketing sphere of this, or spirit of this conversation. We really talked today about mediapreneurs, right, as the new sort of evolution. It's entertainment, it's information, it's new. And, as we talked before we started the interview, and I had mentioned that, I don't even watch TV anymore. It's I go right onto the internet on my Google TV, and I'm into whatever I pick, whether it's an interview from another show like ours, or an online TV show. So things are changing.
Yeah.
Consistency, and I know this is probably one of your, topics that you like to bring up, is probably the most important piece of being an entrepreneur, a mediapreneur, media personality. Talk a little bit about that. And then I want to get into No More Mondays and the Free Agent Academy and the things that you're working on, because I think they're critical for our listeners to hear.
Yeah, the consistency, as you mentioned, is extremely important. This last month that I took off, I was pretty scared to do that because it's the first time that I have missed putting out a show in 5 years. So it was really, really scary for me to do, but it was something at the same time that I needed to do. Your consistency, whatever that is, in putting out a blog or a newsletter or one of these shows, people have to know what to expect. And if that's every day, once a month, it doesn't matter what it is. But if you don't go for 3 months and then you email somebody and you say, hey, I'm going to start up my blog again, we've seen that over and over and over again, and people they lose interest. If they remember who you are, they'll maybe stick with it, but you lose a lot of credibility because all of a sudden we think, where was this guy? He stopped and then he wasn't serious about it, but now he is again. And are we really going to hire you? Chances are no. And that consistency is the number one most important thing when it comes to your platform, is just to have a consistent message that people know what to expect from you. It can be putting out a blog 3 times a day. That's fine. But if that's what people have come to know and expect, then stick to it.
That's great. That's great. So let's talk about your adventures, the Free Agent Academy, and anything else. I love the term No More Mondays. I think that's just great. Can you talk a little bit about maybe the things you're working on today, and some of the things that maybe you've worked with that are out there that our audience would be interested in learning? And obviously, you have anybody who wants to jump on a coaching session with you, certainly we'll put the information in the video. But let's talk about the things that you've worked on that are maybe critical to some of the successes you've seen.
Yeah, you mentioned the Free Agent Academy, and it's something that started. I joined as a member when it was brand new back in 2007, so it's been around for a long time. It's been around a lot. It's been through a lot of iterations over the years, and now it's an online school for self-employed people. So folks who want to go deeper and figure out that purpose, so it's all the way from the beginning, figuring out your purpose to carrying out your purpose through the vehicle of self-employment, or figuring out how to do that in the employed world. You figure out which path you're going to take. And so it's just an online membership program that you go through where I'm the director of operations at the Free Agent Academy. It's freeagentacademy.com. And then I also run the marketing group. So as people go through that and through the classes online at their own pace, they're figuring out what their purpose is and their calling, working through a structured program to figure out their best idea that's going to work for them. And then you go through branding and marketing and online presence and sales, and you figure out how to carry this out so that it keeps coming back to addressing your calling and your purpose. And it's an amazing way to a structured way to work through that to where you can figure out what is it that matters to me, and then how do I do it? And you learn from folks who are experts in their own right in each of those areas. It's phenomenal.
That's awesome. That's awesome. One last thing I wanted to ask. You have a lot of coaching clients, and this is sort of the final wrap up here. What's your biggest takeaway from maybe some of the more higher ended clients that you've worked with? That we're a small marketing firm, or at least we're a small growing marketing firm, but I'm sure you've worked with larger companies that are up the scale a little bit, that are certainly dealing with larger enterprises and big contracts. What's the big takeaway from the guys who have gotten to the point where they're up, high enough, and now they're coming back to you saying, "Hey, I need some help"? What do you see as their big challenge, or the things that they now see as the thing that drives them to come back to coaching?
And I think a big thing that makes those guys successful is that they rely on a team. And it doesn't have to be a team of employees. And that's why, people start to hire coaches, because now we've got a team. Now there's 2 of us. As those guys get bigger, and they don't get bigger until they realize, I cannot do everything on my own. There are a lot of things that need to happen here. and I can't do all of them. I'm not an expert in everything. I might be an expert in one or two or three things, but not everything. And there's marketing, and there's running this thing, and there's reaching out to people, and there's this online component to whatever you're doing. And they know they're not experts, and so they start bringing in experts and figuring out how to work with them. And the best ones out there, which is why I love working with the large organizations that are doing it well, is because they've figured out how to implement a really good team of people who can take ownership of their individual areas and not have to go back and get micromanaged or get, hey, do I do this? Do I do this? Do I do this? They know what needs to be done, and they're getting guidance and leadership, but they're doing whatever needs to be done in their area. And that's that ownership. And so the best leaders know how to bring in the right people, provide leadership, but give them ownership and let them run.
Awesome. Just awesome. All right, Justin, I appreciate all the time. This has just been phenomenal. I mean, I hope people got nuggets out of this. I certainly got a bunch. And I think, wrapping up with, just take ownership and get those people to take the ownership is just, if you can, that's the growth factor right there. And I think you probably try and drive that as a methodology to try for any company. You have to find these people who want to be plus ones, but not plus twos, as I would say.
Yeah, I love that. I love that.
All right. Great. Thanks, Justin.
My pleasure, Matt.